Señoras y señores, quiero presentarles a uno de los bajistas más importantes de la historia de la música. Es bajista de jazz, R&B y rock. También es vocalista. Cuenta con un bachillerato en arte de la Universidad de California. Él es el fundador de la banda de jazz contemporáneo Fourplay y ha tocado junto a los músicos más destacados del mundo como Michael Jackson, Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, Stevie Wonder, Joe Satriani, George Harrison, Daft Punk, Barry White, entre muchos otros. So, I would like to introduce to you one of the greatest bass players in the history of music, the one and only Nathan East. Welcome.
God bless you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Hola.
Let's talk about your beginnings. Your first instrument was the cello. Why
Yes.
did you decide to pick up that instrument?
Well, I wanted to play something. I used to listen to the Charlie Brown special, and the piano was so cool. It was Vince Guaraldi. And so I used to listen to that. And so when I was in junior high school or middle school, I wanted to learn to play something, but they didn't have piano lessons, but they did have one of the string instruments, and the upright was too big and violin and viola were too small. So I picked the cello, and I played that for 3 years before discovering the bass.
Amazing. And when was the first time you picked the bass guitar, and how was your experience at that time?
Yeah, I remember I was 14 years old. It was in church, Christ the King Catholic Church, which is where my older brother Ray, who's a priest now, he's Monsignor, and my older brother David were playing. They had the folk masses back in the early 70s. And so I was kind of tagging along with them at the rehearsal, and there was a bass on the altar. Nobody was playing it. I'll never forget, a little red Gibson EB bass. And when I picked it up, I started playing it, and all of a sudden I just felt this magical feeling in my hands, you know. And they invited me to be in the band, and next thing you know, I was playing bass.
Let's talk about your influences, your main influences on the bass. Which are your main influences?
Well, I mean, early on, especially I was all over the map. So I was listening to Ray Brown, playing on Quincy Jones's records, and Ron Carter, of course, Chuck Rainey, James Jamerson, Paul McCartney. Then there were a lot of bands. So I was listening to Rocco in Tower of Power, and Verdine White from Earth, Wind and Fire, and later, of course, Jaco Pastorius. But I was kind of all over the map, you know, Peter Cetera with Chicago, Charlie Mingus, Scott LaFaro with Bill Evans. So, you know, I was all kind of in the jazz and funk and rock, and it was just fun.
Nowadays, you have many sources to learn music, like YouTube, Spotify, apps, books, and more. Can you tell us how do you learn your music back in the day?
Well, back in the day, there were, you know, the good old record player and radio were the most kind of like available music delivery methods. So, and I was fortunate to have pretty good ears. I could pick up music very well. If I heard a song, I could usually learn it within 1 or 2 listenings, you know, so that was a blessing.
Amazing.
And I was in bands, local bands with my friends, and we would just, we'd rehearse and we'd practice. And again, we'd play music from Kool and the Gang and Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower of Power, Herbie Hancock, all my favorite people, George Benson. And so just kind of pretty much started learning by ear.
Amazing. Cool. So, and how was your experience going into UC San Diego?
Yes, so I figured if I really wanted to, you know, make a life out of it, I figured the education would be the most important thing. So I studied contrabass at UC San Diego with Bert Turetsky, and was in a lot of all the music classes. You know, Cecil Lytle was one of the professors. Those two are still like mentors and friends to this day. but they had a great music program. And again, I just tried to absorb as much as I could, get my reading chops together, and just learn as much about music as possible.
Great. And where do you learn to sing? In which place? Because you sing very well. I like your voice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in the bands, you know, I used to have to sing and playing in clubs and everything. We were playing, you know, top 40 music off the radio. So everybody would get assigned a song to sing, you know. So I remember singing Earth, Wind and Fire songs, you know, Love's Holiday and Stevie Wonder songs. You know, nobody can sing like Stevie, but it was fun to just play those songs.
Great.
And
what happened on January the 2nd, 1980? And what can you tell us about that experience?
Oh yeah, so that was kind of one of my first sessions in the studio with all the big time LA studio guys. You know, I remember you know, I think James Gatson was playing drums, Sonny Burke was on keyboards, I think Lee Ritenour and Ray Parker Jr. And it was for great arranger Gene Page, and it was a Hertz Rent-A-Car jingle commercial. So you had to really be able to read well, but you had to be able to play. And I'll never forget, just like I met all those guys, and then Gene was impressed with my playing. So he started calling me for all the music that he was doing. He was Barry White and Michael Jackson, Dionne Warwick, Elton John. So he just started, he was arranging all those records, and he called me for, to play. And so I found myself from that day working pretty much every day in the studio.
Amazing. So that was the start, I mean, the start point of your session work with many famous artists, right?
Pretty much, you know, and again, it's kind of like a word of mouth, especially back then. So if one of the guys hears you and then recommends you for a session, and then they recommend you, they're kind of like a snowball effect.
Yeah. I was talking with many famous musicians like Thomas Lang, which is a great drummer, and he was telling me the same thing, that back in the day it was a word of mouth. I mean, how you get the sessions, but nowadays is still the same thing, or I mean, it has changed, or is the same thing?
Excuse me. Nowadays, it's a bit different because there's not the same kind of volume of work, and the record industry has changed so much that now I think people are discovered more on YouTube and Instagram and through their social media platforms. The studios have become fewer, and the sessions same. You know, before in those days, there were hundreds of studios filled at all times, and so sessions were going on around the clock. And so it was always, hey, who can we get for this? Oh, get this guy, get Nate, you know, get Lee, get Harvey, you know. So that's how things were happening back then. Nowadays, it's a little different. It's just like people are finding the need to really create their own path forward.
I would like to talk about one of the artists that you worked for many years, which is one of my favorite artists of all time. And obviously, through him, I heard you play the bass for the first time, and I was blown away. In the album Journeyman, in the name of the song was Bad Love. So I want to know, how was your experience playing with Eric Clapton, and how you met him, how you get in touch with him?
Yeah, I think Eric we were destined to play together. Now, actually, the actual song, I did the video, but the actual song Bad Love was Pino Palladino played on. And then, but on Journeyman, you know, I think I played on most of the album. We recorded in New York. But I met Eric, I was introduced to him by Phil Collins when we were working on the Philip Bailey Chinese Wall album in London.
Yeah.
And we went down out to the English countryside, and Phil introduced me to Eric in one of the pubs there. And then I later met him at Live Aid in Philadelphia when he was playing, and I was playing there with Kenny Loggins. And after I came off stage, Eric was on the side of the stage. He said, "Oh, nice, let's hang out a little bit," you know. So it was kind of fate destined to happen, you know. We met up, and then we did an album called August, produced by Phil Collins and Tom Dowd. Then we did a few dates at the Albert Hall, Royal Albert Hall in London after we did that album.
That was the 24 Nights, right? The album, the double album, 24 Nights.
Yeah, 24 Nights was the result of one of those bands, you know, and so that's was
one of my favorite live albums of all time.
Yeah, it's a wonderful album. We started with 6 nights in 1986, and then the next year we did 12 nights. Then we did 18 the next year. Then the next year we did 24 nights, and they figured, okay, we may as well make an album out of it, you know. So it was fun. I think we've played over 100 times in the Royal Albert Hall in London, which is one of my favorite venues as well.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And how was your experience doing the Unplugged? I mean,
oh man, it was
amazing. Yeah.
Again, one of the most fun times, and that really only took like an afternoon. We went out to one of the sound stages out in the country outside of London, Bray Studios, and we set up and just played, you know, at a small group. And I think it was one of the very first Unplugged records made.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be, you know, a phenomenal record. I think it sold 30 million copies. And of course it had the song Tears in Heaven, which I think really touched the hearts of a lot of people.
It's true. Let's talk about Phil Collins. When did you start playing with him?
Yeah, so Philip Bailey introduced me to Phil when Phil was producing Philip Bailey's album. Philip Bailey invited me to go to London and record it with him, and so that was the first time I met Phil in the studio. Against All Odds was #1 the week I met him, and we spent 2 weeks in the studio recording Philip Bailey's song. And on the very last day of recording, we were still looking for a single, and we went over and wrote the song Easy Lover on the last day and recorded it. And so a lot of good music came out of that project.
How long you've been playing Yamaha basses, and how do you choose that brand?
Yeah, I mean, you see I have a few to choose from behind me, and here. I started with Yamaha actually in 1981. I was watching a Lee Ritenour session that Abraham Laboriel was playing, and I said, "What is the bass is that?" Of course, he's an amazing player, and his fingers. I mean, it's all in the fingers. But I said, "What bass is that?" You know, and he had a Yamaha bass, and introduced me to Hagi, who was the Yamaha rep in Japan. And Lee Ritenour invited me to Japan in 1981. That was the first of 80, and I met Hagi, and he put a Yamaha bass in my hand, and I've been playing them ever since.
Let's talk about your Yamaha BB-NE2, the 5-string signature bass guitar.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that instrument?
Funny you should ask. I happen to have one right here, and it's they gave this to me a few years ago when they gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award at Yamaha. I don't know why, but I thought you had to be really, really old to get those. But anyway, this one was a gift that they all signed, and everybody from the Yamaha organization signed it, and including in Japan and America. And it's just, I remember being, you know, being in the design stage of this instrument, where every other day I would go by their Yamaha guitar shop, and Ken DePron, who runs it, we would, you know, go over ideas. How thick do we want the neck? What is the spacing on the strings? The pickups, we would try different pickups and different scale lengths, and we finally came up with this. And we had a couple of tries. The first one still needed a little tweaks, and now it's the BB-NE2, which is what I play regularly.
Exactly. So this is going to be one of the last questions of this interview. For all the bass players that want to have a professional career as musicians, what are the most important things that they have to keep in mind?
Well, it's one of those things you really have to love it and have passion for it. But the most important thing is, I think, is a good solid groove, a good solid foundation, a nice instrument, and just good feel. And when you walk in and approach every song, bring some love to it. And I mean, there's no real one way or prescribed path, but you know, I think the thing you need to bring to it is just passion. You got to really love it. And if you want to go for the long distance, which is what I wanted to do way back a long time ago, you have to really, you know, just be passionate about every note.
It's true. Yeah, passion and love for your instrument, I think, is what moves you. So
yeah,
what, you know, we have this COVID thing and everything is kind of like in a stop mode. So I would like to know, what are your plans for the future? This will be the last question of this interview.
Yeah, you know, what this teaches us is we don't really ever know what lies ahead tomorrow, you know? So that's why it's really taught me to live in the moment and live for today and really make today count, because it's hard to know. I know I got a call from Eric Clapton last week, and, you know, he's going to try to play some dates at the Royal Albert Hall in May of next year. So he was just saying, hey, you ready to jump on a plane and fly? And none of us really know where the pandemic's going to be and if we're even going to be able to fly. But, you know, for the time being, that's one of the first gigs that I have actually booked now for the future, you know. And until then, we just want to keep practicing and make sure going to be able to play once the gigs start opening up again.
Who's on drums? Is Steve Gadd or?
I think Steve Gadd.
He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Actually,
he's one of my favorites.
I'm a drummer, so he's one of my idols. I mean, obviously you're one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. It's funny you should say, because Steve actually called me this morning, and it looks like we're going to be doing a couple things together in the next couple weeks. So
amazing, great. Nathan, it was a tremendous honor for me. I was like, I can't believe it, because I was, you know, hearing Eric Clapton's album when I was like 10 years old. Now I'm 40, you know. So it's like, a dream come true for me talking to you, because you're one of my favorite all-time bass players.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for inviting me, Pablo, and I just want to wish everybody good health and stay safe until we get through this thing, which I'm sure we will at some point, but it's going to take a lot of patience and a little bit of blessings from above. So Dios te bendiga.
Dios le bendiga. Dios le bendiga mucho. And we keep in touch. Okay.
Okay, my friend.
Right, Nathan.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All the best. Ciao.
Ciao.